welcome to the Mariah Jean Fit YouTube channel. I'm Coach Mariah. Make sure you like our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos as much as possible so we can reach a broader audience. We appreciate your support and enjoy the video. Hello and welcome to another vlog and podcast on YouTube and Spotify by the Fit Minds podcast. Coach Mariah here. So today I'm going to dive into the topic of instant versus delayed gratification. I have touched on this topic in previous podcasts, but I'd really like to dive deeper into what this looks like and how we see it commonly occurring amongst the majority of the population, honestly, giving into this instantaneous feeling of pleasure more often than we would like to admit. And how it's working against us, how we can help delayed gratification work for us and getting those long-term goals we've always wanted. So what does it look like? What are some of the examples of seeking instant gratification? You might find these will definitely apply to you, and if they do, and if you have lots of them that apply to you, this may be, and in fact probably is, the core reason why you're not achieving some of those big major goals you've had in life. So how do you identify if you may be geared to chase instant or short-lived gratification instead of chasing the long-term reward? This is something that has gotten worse over the decades with the technology revolution and being able to have everything at our fingertips all the time. It's almost expected that it happens with absolutely every facet of your life. And we know that this is not the case. There are some, and certainly many, very long endeavors that require lots of hard work. So it looks like giving into our immediate desires instead of stopping to consider the benefits of delayed impulsivity. You're not thinking about just putting it off, that initial thought of I must have this now, and waiting for something that might be a little bit better or certainly worth sacrificing that instant fix now. It might look like perhaps engaging in some of the following behaviors. Binge eating or reaching for foods off plan, off track for what you might have already wanted to eat for the day, so that very impulsive way of eating. Settling for things like takeaway, Uber Eats, eating out constantly instead of cooking, snoozing your alarm instead of simply waking up to it. Quite common, in fact, when you snooze your alarm, you don't have enough time to get back to sleep. So this type of behavior, you know that you can't get back to sleep properly. This type of behavior is avoidance and certainly looking for the simple fix of a problem of just waking up. Excessive alcohol consumption, daily or regular alcohol consumption, especially after a long, stressful day or life event. Unfortunately, it has been normalized, especially in American, Western, Australian culture, that we are, totally fine with consuming alcohol every day and that there's no sort of harmful side effects, and there are definitely long-term side effects to daily alcohol consumption, and certainly even binge drinking and having numerous drinks a week. It is being recognized now in many of nutrition practices around the world that no alcohol is good for you. Doesn't mean I'm the alcohol police, but certainly if you are using alcohol to cope, if it is something that you are using to bring you down from stress and to calm you, that is an instantaneous fix, that is instant gratification, that is something that can be seen as an addiction long-term, and certainly, unfortunately, is very difficult for people to identify or at least admit to. It makes them feel very vulnerable. Reaching for alcohol to help you relax, or believing alcohol is needed to help you enjoy yourself more. I find that a really interesting concept. Or let loose and forget about your worries. So people saying, I need alcohol. You don't need alcohol. No one needs alcohol. It's something that you can actually live without, funnily enough. Compulsive spending, shopping or buying items without giving the purchase much thought or without thinking of the financial ramifications, on your budget, on your bank balance, on your future. Racking up credit card debt, spending lavish amounts of money on experiences, food, clothing, events, you name it. Anything that basically costs you money. And without thinking of the financial impact on your future life goals, So you're not thinking ahead, you're just thinking about what feels good now. Gambling regularly, regular drug use of any kind, sex or porn addiction, gaming addiction, smoking cigarettes, caffeine abuse, vaping, etc., and a long list of addictions which may predominantly present as compulsive acts that you cannot resist the urge to engage in. That may come at a detriment to your health and so on, and most of the time they do. Most of the time addictions will impact your health. That's the whole concept of an addiction. Procrastination, to avoid difficult tasks and engaging in an activity which is more interesting at the time, but perhaps not helpful to the task you actually need to or have set out to achieve for the day. So that whole avoidance and procrastination, which I've spoken about in other podcasts, is actually due to this centralized idea that you are trying to look for something that makes you feel good right now, that instant gratification. Becoming impatient with more arduous tasks or projects. So you're getting sick of doing something continuously, and you basically distract yourself with something that is just more interesting. Having a poor understanding or frustration with the process of working towards a larger goal, a bigger picture, or the effort required to do so day in, day out over weeks, months, and even years. Giving up quickly on a goal because it becomes difficult. I see this really commonly in coaching, people who just drop everything because it's hard, and I find that to be really counterproductive, obviously. If you make a mistake or you become bored or it is no longer enjoyable or entertaining, maybe for a couple of days, dropping off from an 8-week challenge or losing interest because you don't see change in the first 2 weeks, or even so that you've had a challenge that's come up within those 8 weeks and all of a sudden you've deemed yourself as a failure because you haven't been perfect. So this is all definitely feeding into this instant gratification, this idea that you have to feel good instantly about everything all the time and you will chase that instead. Becoming frustrated easily with a project, endeavor, or even changing your lifestyle and perhaps expecting you to become perfect with a process overnight, or believing you're a failure at the smaller side of struggle, as I mentioned. So this is this all or nothing type of behavior, and it does centralize around basically avoiding negative emotions and experiences altogether. Attending numerous parties, night clubbing, social events, on the weekends, weekend after weekend, without considering impacts on your health, whether your connections are genuine with the people that you are spending time with, or whether the endeavors are serving a purpose at all, or perhaps working against your long-term goals. Whether these people that you're spending time with are actually friends, whether they are people you actually have anything in common with, and whether they are helping you get to where you want to be in life, or certainly surrounding yourself with those people that inspire you to get to where you want to be in life. Blaming everything or everyone else around you for your lack of results, progress, or success without seeing the part that you may have to play, taking responsibility and learning from your mistakes made without taking a hit to your ego. This is all part of this, all part of the avoidance, and all part of seeking nothing but good. Having trouble embracing adversity and chasing an instant fix instead as a band-aid for a bullet hole, to simply cover up the issue instead of addressing it fully. So, you are basically finding something to make you feel better for now that is not actually going to solve the problem or address the issue long term. Having trouble experiencing negative emotions and often even going to the extent to avoid them entirely, hence seeking out lavish, exciting, or thrill-seeking experiences to counteract the lows or less desirable waves of emotion or feelings. Becoming fascinated with quick changes and exciting opportunities, projects, or adventures, but not ever getting very far into any of them, or not ever fully completing any larger projects, or reaching more monumental goals in life. So if this is you, if you're a person who you haven't saved for that car yet and you've been doing it for 6-7 years, you haven't got the job that you wanted and you've been there for 10 years and you've decided, well, do you know what, I'm just going to put less effort in and show up daily and do what I need to do to make my paycheck. These types of missing the mark, missing that big goalpost, because you've maybe been distracted, maybe there's been other things that you have had to do in life or you've wanted to do in life and that's been holding you back. But in essence, it's actually you holding you back, isn't it? So changing relationships or careers, study paths, and constantly having trouble investing time or energy into a relationship, career, or education long term. So you can see how this is all very much fixation on the next 24 hours, the next week, just getting by. And there's a difference between being mindful and enjoying the 24 hours in front of you and obviously becoming complacent and getting addicted to these very quick, easy feelings of gratification. Choosing to attend a party instead of studying for an exam or finishing an assignment. So again, just avoiding and doing something that sounds more exciting. The urge to take out a loan or find yourself in debt to purchase a brand new car that you can't afford outright and you probably can't afford the payments on. Difficulty sitting still, relaxing or putting your phone down for long periods of time, a feeling you may need to be constantly stimulated. We do see in the era of diagnosis of mental health conditions like ADHD, it's certainly more heightened than previously, and this is not a bad thing, but this is going to be pretty closely related with that as well. So if you do believe that you do have some serious addictions and things like that as well, along with the constant need for stimulation, there could be something deeper going on that's not just about, shit talking instant gratification. There could be something mentally that's happening for you that's on repeat, and you might need to see a psychologist for that. So, it's important to recognize that being like this doesn't make you broken. It actually means that you can work on it, but you certainly can't keep avoiding that as well. Spending all your time with your new partner, or your current partner, instead of finishing your work, studies, your studies, or exercising for the day. So again, just avoiding those arduous tasks and basically doing something that feels better. You haven't ticked off any of your biggest aspirations off your bucket list, like any of them, or at least you haven't ticked off most of them. Or perhaps you don't have much to show for the years in the workforce, in your studies or in your pursuits within your sport. You don't feel like you've progressed at all. Years of trying to save dollars or money, finances, going backwards every time you see something exciting or new to buy, and basically doing that instantly. Not thinking about it, just doing it. Or you may even not have a financial plan, a plan for your health and wellness. You don't particularly like the idea of sticking to structure, or even taking the time to make a plan either. That is boring to you. You don't want to do it, and you avoid doing it at all costs. You may feel lost with your health and fitness goals, or not sure if your current goal is serving you, but you also have trouble adhering to what's required to achieve the goal daily, and you may believe that you need to constantly change your goal every few months or every year in order to fix the way that you feel. So if you're that person who basically has tried a million different things and has stuck to none of them, you might be seeing this instant gratification creeping in here. You find yourself having to seek out new experiences. You have a short attention span and can lose hours scrolling on social media or watching TV aimlessly. Avoiding discomfort or feelings of stress, angst, worry, confusion, heartbreak, or struggle, and perhaps turning to quick fixes like social media or addictions. You may struggle with being patient, waiting for a response from someone, a business owner, or a package that you ordered online. A meal you may be due to eat in a few hours, you are impatient with that and you decide to eat, you're going to have something instead. So you're going to eat something else. Filling up on dinner or gorging yourself without thinking of saving room for dessert. So this is this concept of, I'm going to do what feels good right now without thinking about anything past this moment. And sometimes that can be very positive for those who do feel like they're very anxious. But again, this is not a way to live life all the time if you actually want to accomplish things and prevent things from happening in the future that have made you unhappy. Having numerous sexual partners in a short space of time and/or running from commitment due to the challenging nature or dynamic of maintaining a sustainable relationship. So again, this is not just going to be in your fitness and nutrition, but this is going to pour out into the rest of your life. Leaving a marriage because someone else seems more enticing, more attractive, or better off financially without actually considering who they are as a person. So again, very surface level, very quick fix stuff. Finding yourself in financial hot water and not being able to afford unexpected bills, not being prepared for upcoming bills, and even not being able to afford basic medical care, as you may have no savings put away to do so. I have probably met quite a lot of people like this, and they think it's funny, because that's the only way they can cope with continuing that behavior and permitting it, is if I laugh about it, if I make this seem funny to myself and others, I can get away with it still. I don't have to work on this. And I don't find it funny. I think really poor financial skills, organization, and certainly addictions to really short fixes are basically a band-aid for a bullet hole, as I said previously, and it's only going to make your experience of wanting to accomplish something big very difficult for you. It could even look like influencing others, pressuring other people into living the same carefree lifestyle, but somewhat irresponsible, and having those patterns of behaviors continuing not just for yourself, but for those around you. So you may be actually pressuring people that you care about to do exactly what you're doing, and that's highly inappropriate as well. Bringing other people, and I will say down with you, because these types of behaviors will see a person's life slowly, downturn. It will go downwards. There is no sort of foresight. There's no future planning. People who reach levels of bankruptcy, for example, are going to go into this pile. People who do not consider the ramifications of their immediate actions, and they're only thinking about the immediate pleasure. In that someone may peer pressure others into joining them to make themselves feel better. It's mostly that. Honestly, it really is. When we put it down to it, it's mostly to make yourself feel better, to make other people do what you're doing. Or make it a social norm and ease any thought of consequences or justification as to why they're doing what they're doing so often. They don't have to reflect if they can pressure their friends into doing the same thing. And whether it is very productive, beneficial, or even rewarding for them or their friendships in the long run. So why do we do it? Why do we seek out instant gratification? Why is it worse than ever? And why are we struggling with it? What are the downsides as well to constantly chasing instant gratification? So we have happy hormones that we require to stabilize our moods, including dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, and serotonin. So these all kind of have different roles and are released by different processes, and we require a combination of all of the above for an optimal brain chemical balance and daily function and quality of life. Now, interestingly enough, the balance of these hormones can also definitely strongly influence, in fact they do, they're the backbone of it. Depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide, etc. This can all revolve around, our chemical balance in our brain. It's actually a myth that there is such a thing as a chemical imbalance when it comes to depression and anxiety, because it's not just it just is what it is. It's been created somehow through a series of processes which do occur in the brain. They are our thoughts. That's where we go with them. And obviously things that happen in our life, but where we go with our thoughts, what we do, and obviously then whether or not we are pursuing those happy hormones to counteract a lot of those very difficult times. So where do we get happy hormones from? What are their roles? And what does this have to do with instant gratification? Instant gratification, and certainly if you are severely, going down this path, is basically dopamine addiction, okay? Now, dopamine is something that we do require amounts of for productivity. It's an essential hormone to facilitate deep concentration. So we do need it, but not as much as what people are chasing it, because we actually need the other hormones as well. And unfortunately, what we do is we top ourselves up with dopamine constantly from these really quick fixes. And we don't actually top up our serotonin, our endorphins, our oxytocin, and we basically neglect the other hormones that we need to sustain a happy and balanced mood across the day. So the dopamine is kind of quick hits. That's all it is. But when we have things like serotonin, that actually allows us to have a stable, have you ever had that content feeling throughout the day? We think, yeah, I feel calm, I feel content. That's serotonin. Endorphins, that's when you laugh, okay? When you have a really happy experience and you're having a good chuckle, that's where we have an endorphin release. We also get it from exercise. Oxytocin you get from loving deep connections and relationships in person, right? We actually get oxytocin from these in-person connections. And also from self-love and acts of self-care. Now, if you're not doing any of those, if you're not connecting deeply with your loved ones, if you're not having those acts of self-care, if you're not getting serotonin even from things like accomplishing bigger goals as well, and going for walks, serotonin helps to release, walks help release serotonin, even music, really nice music that you enjoy. If we're not doing all of those things, we don't have an array of those types of processes in our life, we then only function on dopamine. And this can be dangerous to feed off of in larger amounts. Why? Because it's very short-lived, okay? And it can see us crashing really quickly. So if we're constantly seeking instantaneous hits of dopamine, we may miss concentrating on the bigger picture altogether, okay? Because we are chasing, if you think about it, if you have a shot of alcohol, if you have a smoke of a cigarette, and these are all from addictions, right? If you spend money online, you get this, it is really short-lived. If you think about how long it makes you feel good for, it's probably all of a couple of minutes. Alcohol might be slightly longer, obviously, because you've got to wait for the effects to wear off. But really, in essence, it's not, that one cigarette didn't give you joy for an entire year, yeah? That one glass of wine didn't give you a feeling of satisfaction, of accomplishment for months on end because of maybe finishing a university degree, or maybe stepping on stage and competing, or maybe competing in a triathlon where you can talk about this and celebrate it with your friends and family. So it's not about bragging about accomplishing big things in life, but it's the feeling that it gives you. It's actually more important about the sustained happiness that comes from these long-term delayed gratifications. And if you've never experienced it, you will not know how much more wonderful it is than those instantaneous fixes. That's how we end up swapping from the instant fixes to the delayed fixes. And I wouldn't even call them fixes, I'd call them sustained joy, sustained happiness, sustained accomplishment and achievement. And this will have lots of ramifications in your life that are quite positive and long-lasting. So, when we look at chasing dopamine, we remain distracted by the readily available moments of joy, very quick, rather than the long-term and delayed feeling of gratification, which, unfortunately, I hear a lot, people are not patient. I don't think impatient is a personality trait. I think it is a decision, and it is. It is absolutely a decision to be impatient because we entertain that idea. We may not be able to top up enough of the other hormones, endorphin, serotonin, oxytocin, due to this constant feed of nothing but dopamine, as I said. So serotonin is so useful, so useful. And I think a major reason we're seeing issues with depression and anxiety now is that we are neglecting serotonin because we're not even engaging in activities or processes or thought patterns or, anything that's even allowing us to produce serotonin. So things like spending time in nature, deep breathing, etc. And the other experiences that you may have been neglecting due to chasing these quick fixes is probably where we're going wrong here. We're going around in circles. So this can feed the loop of addiction in that we chase the quick fix, the high, and then to bring us back up again, and then we repeat the vicious cycle because we crash, we chase the quick fix again, and that's literally addiction, right? And also the fact that we use substances, or we might use quick processes like, impulse buying as a way to make us feel better for the moment. So most addictions, even quick hits of yummy foods, etc., will give us a dopamine boost, okay? But we can come crashing down from these partying, social events, whereby we've all experienced it with substance abuse, and that's binge drinking, right? Whereby it no longer feels nice the next day. We feel like absolute rat shit, and everyone talks about the depression the day after drinking. That's not a good thing. That is literally your brain telling you that the chemicals in your brain have gone haywire because you've smashed them with dopamine. You've got dehydration there as well. There's all sorts of things that go into the mix of binge drinking alcohol. And the after effects, the hangover isn't just about feeling physically like shit. You are mentally feeling like shit as well. So it's not just with alcohol. You'll experience it with drugs as well. There is a reason why it's a high and a low. And we see this because, yes, we have this huge surge of dopamine, but then we obviously see that crash afterwards. If we think of life in reverse and we try to approach it from a perspective of things will be difficult before they are easy or even pleasurable, that this is where we see delayed gratification rise above instant gratification. So, these types of addictive behaviors, the joy lasts not very long. There is no sort of long-lasting benefit. No one can tell me that. No one can say there's any sort of really big positive outcome in reality. And most are going to be fairly harmful to our physical and mental health long term. It encourages a concept of, yes, living in the moment. I hear this quite a bit. Well, Mariah, you're being a killjoy, let people live in the moment. I think that is a cop-out because all it does is just permit the behavior to continue, and that style of living, which we see, the 9-to-5ers grinding every day and coming home and having a few drinks, not having time to exercise, but having time to have half a bottle of wine. This type of stuff is where we're seeing people's health decline. You're seeing health decline because health is no longer being chosen. We have instant fixes and addictions being chosen instead. So it endorses this idea that there are no consequences for the choices, or at least they are forgotten, poof, into thin air, ha ha ha, so funny, I have a beer gut, I don't even think about the impacts of it on my health because I love beer. And I see this is Australian culture, it is bullshit. It is absolute bullshit, and I grew up with it as well. I did grow up with this type of culture. I resisted, moved away from that, got away from that world because I realized nothing good came of it. Nothing good came of it. Nothing good long-term came of it. And nobody can argue with me on that basis, is that we are falling back on these instant fixes to almost sabotage our long-term goals and our long-term our future. What we want for ourselves in the future doesn't look like being sick. Right? Nobody says, I want to end up in hospital. Nobody says, I want to end up with, kidney or liver damage. Nobody says, hey, look, I really want to have a heart attack. But nobody actually thinks about that when they pursue these types of harmful endeavors to make themselves feel better. All they can focus on is justifying it right then and there. So impulsive behavior is also aligned with risk-taking behavior. In reality, there are consequences for every action and decision that we make. If we take time to consider them in the moment before acting on them, we can understand, holy shit, where would I be if I continued this for 20 years from now? But most people aren't thinking about that. So the risk-taking behavior that we see with impulsive behavior, because it is risk-taking behavior, isn't it? Impulsive behavior is risk-taking behavior. Why? The risk or the perceived risk is certainly higher the more impulsive that you are, because impulsive decisions come without what? A risk assessment, yeah? So this may endanger your life, your well-being, your health, and perhaps even the lives of others as well. So things like drink driving, right? Making those types of impulsive decisions, driving to the bottle-o because you run out of beers and you just decided, fuck it, I'll just do it anyway. So I talk a lot about alcohol because alcohol has destroyed a lot of people's lives, and certainly the overconsumption thereof, but it's because the impulsive behavior goes hand in hand with this type of stuff, where people make impulsive decisions, or whether they decide they want to speed on the highway because they're late for an appointment, they want to do 150 an hour. That's an impulsive decision that doesn't actually think about their ramifications thereafter. It must be known and understand your immediate actions have a direct effect on many factors in your life and the lives of those that you care about, okay? And this is where instantaneous gratification and delayed gratification, this is where instantaneous becomes life-threatening, okay? And this is where it is not funny anymore. It is quite serious, and encouraging this type of behavior and mindset will lead you down that path. It is inevitable. Unfortunately, chasing instant gratification can see you erode relationships, burn bridges, and also have very little self-awareness, self-control, and self-discipline. I was that girl. For anyone listening to this podcast currently who thinks I'm bashing people who want to have fun and enjoy life and, oh my God, she's such a Nazi, I've been there, okay? I did it. For years, I did the binge drinking, I did the late nights, I did the lifestyle that was questionable. For about 6 years, that was nothing but my life. Full-time smoking, full-time drinking. I did blame everybody else for my problems. I was drinking Red Bulls and eating KFC every day. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes. I was eating a pack of chips because that was what was there. I didn't think about the ramifications of my actions, and as a result, I kept finding myself in hot water all the time, being in financial situations where I couldn't afford to pay for something because I had no savings. And that was something I had to change. Even with my lifestyle and my health. And I speak from personal experience because I can talk about addiction because I was there. I've been there. I had anorexia, which was an addiction, and bulimia, which is an addiction to purging. I've had an alcohol and smoking addiction. So I'm no stranger to this type of instantaneous gratification. And when you look at it, if a person decides to change their life and look for the long-term goal and look for what they're looking forward to in the future, that is a decision. And it was a decision on my behalf. It was something I had to choose to do. I was listening to podcasts like the one that you're listening to right now to get my headspace into that position. And I'm going to give you the advice on how you can do that, how you can make these shifts. So in this process as well, you may feel as though negative things are constantly happening to you without reflecting on the role you had to play in these. I've done that. It was like, I got a flat tire and this happened and my car broke down and my phone's flat because I wasn't thinking. I just wasn't thinking. I was thinking about what felt good instantly all the time. This can present you as selfish, inconsiderate, or even reckless, reckless behavior to those around you. It's no coincidence that it would probably be creating a very abrasive relationship and connection, or lack thereof, with other people if you are constantly behaving this way. Your long-term goals are dangled in front of you elusively, almost as though they're always out of reach. However, every time you give in to the instantaneous fixes, you may in fact be moving the goalposts further and further away from yourself as you sacrifice everything that you want for these very quick, happy choices that just give you satisfaction in the moment. And you are literally, as I said, moving those goalposts away from yourself. You are the person delaying this. This may leave you wondering why you have not progressed in many or some areas of your life more than others, okay? Because think about your direct choices and impact on those areas that you have made. Or you may have spent years wanting to improve your fitness and yet avoiding exercise altogether because you'd rather watch TV or relax or scroll on social media. These are all these moments where you've said, I don't feel motivated, I don't feel driven, I've just decided I'll just stay home because I just feel like doing that. It may leave you feeling empty, okay, alone. It may leave you feeling helpless. So you can see that this doesn't actually coincide. All of these quick fixes don't coincide with a very good sense of self-worth or a high sense of value, self-value either. You may find yourself struggling to build your self-confidence and worth due to the constant reaches for instantaneous gratification and the ignorance of the longer endeavor. After all of the thrill-seeking, the easy choices and carelessness around decision-making processes, you may be left with feelings of confusion, lacking direction, even grief, even regret, right? If you're a person who's very regretful in your life, I dare say that this may be part of the problem. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes you have regret just because you do. But I find that people who are very much geared to be chasing instantaneous fixes will have lots of regret. Oh, fuck, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have spent that money. I shouldn't have gone drinking on the weekend. You know, shoulda. How are you getting yourself there? You know, how are you getting yourself to this position where you have so much regret? Because you're doing things without thinking about them. How do we stop doing it? You know, now I've kind of addressed and obviously, as I mentioned, like feelings of helplessness, fear of failure, you know, all of these other podcasts actually, weirdly enough, go under this umbrella. The fear of failure, the self-doubt, feeling out of control, feeling disorganized, beginning to resent your own decisions like, I shouldn't have done that. I'm so mad at myself for making that choice. And this can either become something you continue to ignore, dismiss, and repeat, or it can be a catalyst for change. You can stop doing this shit. You can stop settling for the quick things. You can stop settling for what feels good right now in the next 30 seconds, in the next 5 minutes. You can stop doing that. Now, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to tell you how you can stop doing that, or certainly how you can start, right? Where you need to start with that process. I've done it. I've gone from addiction. I've gone from, and I'm not saying this because just because I've done it means everybody else can. I did do it. And I remember the feeling of being able to come back from addiction and self-hatred and going through that journey of taking responsibility for my actions and actually being empowered by that and looking forward to things long-term when I invested energy and time into that long-term, no matter how good it felt at the time. That is the key to long-term success. That is the key to that person's, if you keep looking at that self-comparison to others, comparing, and I've done a podcast on that as well, if you do that, if you're looking at a person's life, they probably don't give in to quick shit. They don't give in, they don't smoke, they're not, you know, drinkers. If they are, you know, maybe that's their one vice or whatever it might be, but you don't even need to have a vice. Nobody needs a vice. Nobody needs alcohol. Nobody needs cigarettes. Nobody needs addiction. Nobody needs a shopping compulsion. No one does. No one actually needs any of these things. But you can change your life. You can move away from that through a conscious decision and thinking about where is this going to see me in a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, thinking about your future self, empathizing with your future self. So how do we stop doing it? I've talked about, you know, what it looks like, why we do it, the shit bits of it, the parts that, you know, are not enjoyable with with instant gratification, because let's be honest, we only ever think about what's good about it when we're doing it. So how do we stop doing it? If you're able to identify cause for concern through a potential fixation on instant happiness, there is good news. You can get control of it. You can certainly look at turning your life around in a way which will allow you to romanticize the idea of delayed gratification and in turn experiencing the euphoria of achieving a long-term goal. Change the way you think and you change the way that you operate. Right? If you change what your fixation is, whether it is with what you see immediately in front of you now, or whether it's what you see for yourself in the future, if you start to think about the bigger picture, you will experience the benefits of doing so. Firstly, you've got to start to imagine and empathize with your future self, as I said previously. What would you like for yourself? Where would you like to envision yourself perhaps in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, and maybe even 10 to 20 years from now? What do you want for your life? That's what this whole discussion is about. This doesn't have to look like an exact plan or map of your life. It's not about having, you know, a mud map and making sure all your, you know, you cross your T's, you dot your I's and everything lines up and the stars are amazingly aligned and everything's perfect. But it looks like, you know, looking at things that are important to you, your morals, your values, your aspirations. Where do you want to travel? What career do you want for yourself? You know, how many children do you want? Do you want children at all? Like actually thinking about and what that looks like as a general timeline. Life never works out exactly that way, but if you have no plan at all, if you have nothing going on in your mind and you're just like, I'm straight cruising, right? Imagine doing that imagine going, I've used this analogy before, imagine going for a drive, not using Google Maps, not using a map and just going, fuck it. I mean, you might have a good time, you might not, but you're not gonna get anywhere specific that you actually want to be without the direction and the plan and the execution. So secondly, you will have to record this type of goal setting or mapping out the smaller goals required to achieve the larger ones. There's no coincidence, I've said this in previous podcasts. Write this shit down. Write it down, record it, have it somewhere that you see it. It might look like aiming for and reaching smaller checkpoints across the coming months and years. And in fact, that's how you achieve a big goal. Like, it's not, hey, I want to buy a house. It's, hey, I want to save 10 grand. I want to save 20 grand. I want to save 30 grand. I want to save 40 grand. I want to spend a little bit less money on my makeup so that I can give more money to the house deposit I'm trying to save for. It works with every single thing that you do, setting micro goals for a macro focus. I've spoken about this in a previous podcast. So these all piece together, these concepts all piece together. Sometimes it can help to have your big goals as a reminder somewhere visually that you can see them, whether it's a poster or pictures of things that you want to accomplish, a vision board if you really want to make one, words written somewhere, a background display on your phone, put it on your, I say this to clients all the time, write it on your window, or you can write it on the mirror every day that you see, saying nice things to yourself, affirmations to keep you going. Somewhere that you know that you're going to read them as a reminder when you feel like poop, okay? Or you're feeling flat. Even communicating your goals and aspirations with somebody that you trust. So important, it's somebody you trust who will support and encourage you and who cares about you. If you find that you are sharing your goals with people repeatedly and they're just putting you down and giving you really shitty answers and responses, don't share your future goals and aspirations with them, because they're probably not the right person to do that with. It can also be helpful to remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing as often as you can. Compare where you are now from where you were a couple of weeks, months, or even years ago. And this can be the precise encouragement that you need to keep moving, okay? To keep moving forward, sometimes you need to look back so that you can compare. Often if we reflect upon the decisions we're making currently in the benefit that they have had for us this far in our lives, it can help us continue with it. It's like, this feels hard right now and it's annoying and it's frustrating, but that's right. It's why I am where I am today. Or that's right, it got me to this point so far, even though it's hard. So it's identifying, it's always gonna have positive and negative sides to it. Chasing something that is a difficult task, right? A difficult goal. And there's a series of little difficulties amongst all of the, mini types of accomplishments, right? It's like you can achieve, as I said, you could be saving for something, or you could be having a fitness goal, and it's like, oh, one day I see this tiny little peep of muscle on my leg. Oh, that looks cool. That's like a tiny bit of encouragement to keep going. And then you go and do your leg session. Oh shit, my legs hurt, and oh my God, and Joe wanted to have a chat for 5 hours, and now they've made my session all feel like crap, and I'm going home and I wish I didn't go, and I feel tired, or whatever. No one ever says they wish they didn't go to do a workout, but we can experience these negative parts of chasing a long-term goal, but we must remind ourselves of the long-term goal itself, but the small positive things that have been happening along the way that we've noticed with the consistency and perseverance that we've applied. Yeah, and if you haven't applied that, you can't complain. If you're 1 week in, or 2 weeks in, or 3 months in, and you haven't been applying anything, and you're whinging about the fact that nothing has changed yet, well, again, it's not the stimulus, it's not the thing that you're meant to be doing towards a long-term goal. You've probably been giving back into that, instant gratification again. So this can help us shake off the feeling of immediate frustration, okay? Reminding ourselves why we're doing this, that we might be feeling frustrated with the entire process, and guide us back on track towards our pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, okay? Because nobody said it was going to be fun finding the pot of gold all the time, Nobody's walking around telling you like, hey, by the way, you're going to be this picturesque idea of a fitness influencer, and you're going to be going and bouncing into every workout with your protein shake and a face full of makeup, and you're just going to be a bundle of joy every time you go to the gym or you do your meal prep. Can't tell you how many times I've done meal prep in a big baggy t-shirt, and I just thought, I hate doing meal prep. I can't, there are so many monotonous tasks of doing what I do and accomplishing what I do that I don't like, but I do them anyway, because I'm not thinking about what makes me feel good instantly. I'm thinking about what's going to make me feel good long-term, and those types of accomplishments are just incredible. They light your soul on fire. So sometimes it can help to envision where you're going, okay? Where you're going to be once you have achieved a goal. Imagining how proud you'll be of yourself and those around you who will also be proud of you, whether it be your children, your partner, your family, your co-workers, whether it's just you, especially if your direct circle doesn't necessarily understand why you're pursuing your goal, or they might question it. It might be you're the only person that you will have as a support person. You might need to seek out somebody else. So be careful becoming too reliant on external motivators. Like if you do have a great support network, it's going to make your process a lot easier, your journey a lot easier. Sometimes you do require your own purpose, your own drive, your own direction, and not necessarily rely on the acceptance and encouragement of everyone around you. So important to solidify that. You do not need to have everyone's acceptance to chase something that you want. Why do they need to understand why you're doing it? If they do, great. If they don't, fall back on why you're doing it and remember your why. Perhaps focus on communicating your progress with those who mostly support your endeavors, and those who don't and continuously don't, just stay silent, or maybe reduce their exposure to your announcements. As I've said in previous podcasts, distance yourself from personalities, connections, or interactions that may discourage you from heading towards a larger goal. These types of people will probably do this not just to you, but other people. Okay, I've seen this really commonly in the coaching industry. There are coaches who do it, there are clients who do it, there are just people who do it, who get inside other people's heads and try to discourage them or make them feel like they are lesser, or that what they're chasing is too difficult or not achievable, and it's actually more common than you'd realize. So the simple answer is don't try to make them happy. Distance yourself from them and you'll realize how much better your life will get. No matter how advantageous your aspirations may be, this person may actually be one of those people who are conditioned to a lifestyle full of perhaps those instantaneous gratification choices, right? So it's like, don't take advice from somebody or feedback from somebody that you would not want to live the lifestyle of. If you are constantly being told by this same person, hey, don't you think you're too old for this? Or, don't you think that you don't have the right genetics for it, or whatever it might look like. If you look at their lifestyle, do you want to be like them? Are you thinking, you know what, you are the absolute epitome of success and you're right, I need to follow your advice. Most of the time, these people giving you advice, you don't want to be anything like them. And even then, they probably aren't executing those long-term goals very well themselves. So it's important not to ignore the consistent addictive behaviors that you may be engaging in entirely, right? So talking on the topic of, okay, it's all good and well to aim for something good, but what about the things that I'm struggling with? In that you would need to identify which behaviors are possibly working against you and your goals, whether it be in the way of consuming more of your time than necessary or feeding a sense of immediate happiness. It might look like your habit of walking to the cupboard to snack on random foods when you're stressed out, or it might look like doom scrolling on social media at 11:30 at night. It can be helpful to set goals to do the reverse and resist the temptation of the choices made towards instant gratification, which may be counterproductive to your goals, okay? And usually they are. Usually those instant fixes are pretty counterproductive to the other things you want in your life. It might look like setting more tangible goals and creating structure around preventing these types of instant, not so well thought out choices. Perhaps it might look like limiting your social media time to less than 1 hour daily, giving yourself that limit, that marker. Maybe logging out of social media platforms until you have completed everything you want for the day that isn't in relation to social media. So this is kind of like well, hold on, my life is more important than scrolling, and I need to make sure that I put it first in order to experience the benefits of doing so. And that can often help. Look, psychologists can help with you on establishing healthier, more beneficial ways of coping with feelings of stress, anxiety, anger, or frustration. It would be ill of me to jump on here and say what I'm telling you is going to help absolutely every single one of you. You may not be able to make these changes alone or with a podcast. You may need some deep therapy sessions, and in fact, most fucking people do. Most people need therapy, and they either say they can't afford it or they avoid it, and trust me, it's expensive. It is expensive. But at what cost is it to the rest of your life avoiding going and seeing a psychologist to help you then completely transform the way you think and operate of benefit to you long term? I actually see huge value in psychology sessions. I've done dozens and dozens and dozens of them over my time, even since I was about 8 years old. And every single time I saw a psychologist, I learned something else about myself and about what I could do to change, what I could do for myself. Mostly it was self-empowerment, and psychologists are honestly incredibly educated people. They have to go to university and do between 4 and 6 years of study, or plus some, okay? Because they need to understand the human mind, and they can help you with breaking free of addiction, ways of coping. There's lots of different methods that work for different people. It might not be coping mechanisms. It might be all sorts of different types of therapy they can apply. And it's funny because I talk about psychologists a lot. My mother is a psychologist, and I think, and I have seen, certainly from what her pursuit has been, is that it honestly can be life-changing for people, and it is life-changing for people. Having a psychologist or having a mentor, having somebody in your life who can support you and who can identify some of the stuff for you. So some of the coping mechanisms, or just things that I can suggest, journaling, calling a loved one instead, like writing something down, or just getting stuck with journaling. You might not have done it for years. Calling a loved one, having a good chat, never feel guilty for doing so. They're usually the person who's willing to pick up. Reading, listening to music, exercising, improving your inner dialogue, okay? Starting to change the conversation you have with yourself. Yes, that is a conscious decision as well. We choose negative thoughts. We must choose negative thoughts. We must also choose positive ones, or certainly ones that are more constructive. Going for a walk and even practicing breathing techniques. Okay, we go on a lot about breathing techniques in the wellness world, but it is beneficial in some instances, certain breathing techniques. More importantly, reflecting upon some not so ideal behaviors or decisions in a way that isn't necessarily beating yourself up can indeed help to give you insight into how you may be perhaps subconsciously sabotaging your long-term success through chasing instantaneous gratification. Celebrating small accomplishments with loved ones can often encourage you to keep going towards your end goal. If you accomplish something in silence and you're okay with this process, that's completely fine, but sometimes it can be helpful to share your little wins as well as your big ones, as this can remove the somewhat monotonous component of working towards a goal and replace the in and out daily mundane grind with small doses of appreciation of your own efforts. Remember, the small accomplishments add up to the big ones, and reflecting upon these can often encourage you to keep on in the pursuit of such. So perhaps putting aside a day in your diary or calendar to plan your meals as well is a great idea, and snacks ahead for the week, or even just what you're doing, your appointments, etc. To include things that you enjoy in life as well. So things like, not just having this daily grind, but having small moments like taking the kids to the park, or it might be even with your food, incorporating foods that you enjoy into your meal plan. We can actually plan for enjoyment. We can plan to have nice things in our life. But if we are constantly reaching for what feels good right now and not planning ahead, well then we're kind of operating from a very erratic perspective, aren't we? We are loose cannons, so to speak. Possibly encouraging the inner dialogue that discusses other more reasonable options when you're presented with the issues in the future. So again, it's this conversation we have with ourselves that is incredibly powerful. Our mind and our voice, our inner voice, is the most powerful tool we have access to. Much of prevention, relies on planning and committing to change or consistency. So it's not just, I want to do this, I want to do that. It's like, you have to write this down. You have to plan. You have to do the thing that feels difficult and overcome that in order to commit yourself to that change. It's not just a thought that happens in our mind. It has to be something that is on paper, is in reality, is something that you will be reminded of constantly. However, we have to establish a healthy relationship with ourselves and that conversation we have internally in order to catch ourselves in a tense or testing moment. So despite having a plan, we still need to be able to do that. I guess you could call it like damage control, or not even that, because that would be after. But be mindful of what's happening in the moment. We can have this awesome structure of our week that looks brilliant on paper and everything's planned and amazing and goes to plan perfectly. And then we're thrown in the deep end with an emotion, and it's like, hold on, we also need to be able to figure out what we do in that moment. So again, this is where psychologists come into play. I can touch on these topics. I can say, look, this is what this kind of looks like, and what we see as coaches, as nutritionists, as life mentors. But a psychologist can actually get in there with you and actually get in the thick of all of it. But it doesn't look like getting mad at yourself or getting angry, rousing on yourself, rather simply purposely becoming more aware of the decisions and their subsequent outcomes from a neutral but empowered standpoint. I think people I've seen who are self-aware, they don't necessarily, they're not mad, they're not angry with themselves. It's almost like, oh yeah, I know I do this, and oh yeah, I did do that. But it's not, I fucked up, I made a mistake and I'm so mad with myself. It's almost like the way you would treat a friend if you saw that they'd made a mistake and you wanted to help them. Yeah? Sometimes it does look like standing up to yourself, as well, just as you would stand up to somebody else if they were pressuring or tempting you away from something you truly want for yourself. So if you've got that voice in your head going, just eat the whole packet of Tim Tams, it won't matter, fuck it, you feel like shit. Like, hold on. you've also got to have another voice. It's like, don't be a dick, okay? Like, really, that's just rude. You do not have to always give in to that voice. You can stand up to yourself, and in the end, our thoughts become actions. And, you know, in order to change our actions, we need to first start with our thoughts. We need to change our thoughts. So it's changing that discourse and realizing that that initial, very panicked and sometimes very instant voice that we hear is not always going to be correct, and not the one that we need to listen to, for sure. So understanding and reflecting on the impacts of your decisions or choices and behaviors on those around you is really important. Often this can be the serious wake-up call that we need. Okay, so it's not just about thinking about your future, but how you're impacting those you care about. And if you find that you're continuously doing that with this type of instant gratification, you know, whether it be you might be eating someone else's snacks in the cupboard, or it also might be impacting your relationships because you're not making decisions to help yourself as well. This is where sometimes that type of thought process, shit, it's not just me I'm impacting, it's other people, can help us change. Remembering that along the way, reversing some of these behaviors and choices will be incredibly difficult. It's not easy to give up things that feel good quickly, you know? It's like these have become, I guess, that instant push button that we have in front of us that we've used for so long, and it can be incredibly uncomfortable giving up things that have felt like they are second nature to us for so long. You must be kind and gentle with yourself, patient with the process, and understand that it is difficult, but not impossible to shake addictions, impulses, and a feeling and lack of self-control. So this constant drive towards things, but not understanding your why, or not understanding the depth of the cause and effect, it is difficult. It's difficult to change. It's difficult to move forward with that, and it's okay to go, yep, you know, I know that I've got some things that I reach for, like, you know, things like compliments from strangers as well. I've seen a lot of people on the internet almost thrive from that. You know, they want random people to compliment them and to give them this affirmation that they could probably give to themselves, or they should be giving to themselves. And so it's this type of stuff that we have to slowly pry away from our fingers in order to then chase the things that are more long-lasting and that mean more in the end. It doesn't mean that we need to take the first, you know, impulsive action in order to avoid or dismiss, you know, the types of feelings that we have, right? So, you know, we don't have to go, okay, well, I'm feeling negative, so therefore I'll just put this behind me and stuff that, you know, like I'll just move forward, and I had a bad day, and everyone has bad days. And it's not, this is, again, I always talk about toxic positivity. It's not about saying I didn't feel the feeling and I shouldn't feel the feeling, and I shouldn't feel frustrated, I shouldn't feel lost, I shouldn't feel like this is hard, and I shouldn't feel as if I'm stressed, right? Because these are all normal, natural emotions and feelings and processes. It's more so a case of normalizing the negative feelings at times. Feeling frustration, struggle, disinterest, boredom, and inconvenience is normal. If you do not normalize this and allow yourself to feel it and go through it, then you will also not be able to experience that again without the same default back to those impulses, right? So much of it is actually sitting with discomfort. It's sitting with something being uncomfortable. It's sitting with something feeling a bit boring, feeling like you've been sitting in a lecture for 2 hours and you've absorbed none of it. But you might have absorbed some of it, you know? And it might be that some things feel like pulling teeth for you, but that's okay. It's not to be glorified to avoid difficulty. We should not avoid difficulty, because difficulty eventually gives you an outcome of something that you wouldn't have had if you didn't face the difficulty, right? So there's always going to be something on the other side. There's going to be something on the other side of that difficulty that you will enjoy. You know that because there's that pursuit in that direction of what you're trying to achieve, you know? If you're trying to lose 20 kilos, it's like there's going to be stages through that 20 kilo fat loss journey where you're going to be tired, where you're going to be demotivated, where you're not going to feel excited to go exercise, where you don't want to do meal prep and you'd rather sit down and watch your favorite Netflix series. But it's important to embrace those negative feelings. Let them happen, let them come, and let them go. We don't need to dismiss them. We need to acknowledge them. We need to vocalize them. We need to write them down. We need to allow them to exist, right? Let them be loud. It can often help to reduce the feeling of being overwhelmed. If you feel like you're going on a fitness journey, nutrition journey, you're trying to overhaul your life and you feel overwhelmed, sometimes it's nice to write down the things that you're confused about, and also that's why having a coach is great, because they can answer those questions. Never feel like you're a burden on your coach. In the beginning, there's always going to be lots of nitty-gritty questions you're going to have to ask, and your coach should be prepared for that. There's information that they can provide for you to help you. Like any experience in life, if you have avoided everything new and foreign and different because it was hard to learn, imagine if you did that with walking, with talking, right? Imagine if you did it with the fundamental basics of your life as a child. You wouldn't be where you are today. So establishing this idea that difficulty learning and difficulty getting through something that is new and foreign and hard is okay. It is normal. You should be struggling at some point, because if you don't, how are you meant to expect yourself to make it slowly become something that's easier for you, something that is not so hard, that becomes second nature, that becomes a lifestyle? We don't even think about walking anymore because it is easy. But when we were kids, when we were tiny little, toddlers, or trying to take our first steps, it's the hardest thing we could think about doing. But we put all of our effort and might into it. No matter how many times we fell down, we always got up and tried again. You need to take that same approach, that same childlike approach with things that you want in your life, instead of chasing, the quick fix and maybe just staying on the ground and crawling. And along with that too, the idea that choosing a less exciting, less than perfect, or less instantly fulfilling experience, right, at least for now, it actually will be worth it and it will pay off in the end. So we've got to entertain the idea that it doesn't feel super awesome right now in here. I've got to go to the gym in half an hour. I've got to present a little seminar, and then probably 45 minutes I've got to go to the gym. I couldn't think of anything I would rather do than relax and not go to the gym because I'm very tired today. But I will go. I keep saying to myself, every time I say, look, I'll just stay home, I'll just rest, because, it'd be so much nicer just to have a bath instead. I got enough sleep. There's just an adversity I have because it's been a long day at work. An aversion. And you've got to normalize the idea that it's not going to be so exciting to do it, but it will be worth it because there is something I want as a result of doing this. There is a goal that I have that is aligned with these less than exciting moments in life that we must do to get there. Understanding that hard work and accomplishment go hand in hand for a prolonged period of time, okay? You cannot accomplish something phenomenal without the hard work paired with it for a prolonged period of time. There are not many things in life that you can do for 30 seconds, 5 minutes, or even a couple of hours that are going to pay off for years, right? And in some cases, maybe yes, if you win the lottery, but the chances of that are slim, and that's gambling. So when you actually think about it, hard work and accomplishment go hand in hand for prolonged periods of time, and that is a hard pill to swallow. However, they can be interrupted by short bouts of mistakes, challenges, etc. along the way, and setbacks are a part of the hard work. You're not going to have a perfect journey. Stop idolizing this idea, and you will possibly also stop reaching for the next best thing because it didn't go to plan. Often trusting the process, I know this sounds very cliche, but persevering and practicing patience with yourself and the process can see you through such times. So sometimes it's that reassurance that what I'm doing is going to work. What I'm doing is going to work. If I'm not doing what I need to be doing, then it's not going to work. So I need to keep doing what I need to be doing for it to work. Yeah? That's the whole point of consistency, is that you cannot question the process unless you are following it, and you must trust the process for a longer period of time than a couple of days, and even more than a couple of weeks. However, obviously in the beginning of any journey, goal, aspiration, or project, you will experience many learning curves which do not need to deter or derail you. So despite obviously, pushing through all of this type of stuff, you will have challenges. Even if you push through one and you've gone through it, that's not the end of it, And in the beginning, it's going to be much harder. So if you're a person who takes something up, gives up on it really quickly because it didn't feel good automatically and instantly, that's why you keep doing that. It's because you didn't get past the really shit bit. That's the hardest bit. The stickiest bit is at the start. That will challenge you the most. That will test you the most, right? So much of it is realizing this isn't going to always be like this either. It will actually, as you lose more body fat, for example, and you keep it off and you keep this lifestyle, and you learn different ways to incorporate foods you enjoy without going, over your calorie budget, et cetera, and you actually start to maintain a pretty healthy lifestyle, it becomes easier. It is not hard. It becomes your new life, and it becomes something that, even from personal experience and what I've seen with clients, life-changing in such a positive way. So strive for progress, not perfection. Improvement comes from repetitious efforts over time, and that's repetitious as much as possible, okay? Rather to set you back on the path, that you're meant to be on, right? So these types of repetitious efforts and the mistakes that you're seeing, they're not designed to hurt you or to harm you or to bring you down, but rather to set you back on the path that you were meant to be on, okay? Mistakes are not a reason, or certainly struggles are not a reason to choose something that is easier in the moment. And if you do that currently, that's a bigger mistake, is giving up on what you really want because of a minor inconvenience or what might feel like quite a lot right now and probably won't tomorrow. It might look like hiring a coach to have somebody on your side, in your corner, in order to help you identify and address recurring behaviors. Because sometimes when we look inside ourselves, we have a biased view. We can sometimes be too critical, or we can be not critical enough and possibly, deviate and avoid. I think both of those types of I wouldn't even call them self-reflection, but maybe behaviors towards yourself can be incredibly toxic. Really toxic and very difficult to break, but certainly not impossible, because you're here listening to this podcast for a reason, right? You're here listening to this podcast because you want to change, because you want to be more aware, because you want to have that opportunity to nip things in the bud. Psychologists, nutritionists, personal trainers, mentors, and dietitians can work closely with you, okay, on a number of struggles that you may be having with adhering to nutrition and training. Anything, financial goals, life goals. It depends on obviously each individual professional and their scope. Each of the specialists will have their own area of expertise and legal scope, okay? So it's all good and well to listen to podcasts, and it's funny because I would love for you to listen to my podcasts and think that is the end of the line. But if you really want to tackle your wholesome, holistic, bigger picture of your health and your life, sometimes you have to hire or have multiple professionals at different points in time to help you. Whether you can financially afford one more than the other at a point in time, or which one's probably more important, you could cycle between them, do 6 months with a psychologist, do another 6 months with a coach or a nutritionist, do 6 months with a life mentor, a business mentor, but whether it's separating them so that you can financially, justify it. I always encourage this though. I encourage going to the right professional for you, and that will obviously mostly stem from what you need the most work on and with. You would be surprised how much faster, or at least more efficiently, you will achieve a particular goal if you're not inside your own head and you have somebody else there with you. If you have help from someone who can identify and address issues that you may not have been willing to, or you may not have been able to identify previously. You might be a pushover. You might be a person who just gives into everything all the time, gives into peer pressure, goes to the parties because so-and-so is going and you feel like a bad friend if you don't. And interestingly enough, sometimes we can't pick that up. Sometimes we don't have that awareness just yet. And even as life goes on, we never really know how, I suppose, other people perceive us. It's not really that important, but we can only really see what we see internally. And so a little bit of a head fuck, isn't it? And sometimes it helps to have somebody on the outside who has our best interests at heart and who is invested in helping us become better for ourselves. That's literally what the role of allied health workers in mental health, in nutrition, in mentorship, in training is. That's what their role is, in dietetics as well. And dietetics is fantastic. If you seem to have more issues with eating and behavioral eating than anything, dietitians, especially those who specialize in eating disorders, are fantastic for this, because very hard to come by, mind you, but certainly they can work with you on eating behaviors and specific techniques in those areas. So it's important to reach out to a mental health professional such as a psychologist, counselor, or even psychiatrist, right? If you strongly believe, and psychiatrist is more for the case of someone with, diagnosis of mental health conditions requiring medications. If you believe that you may require psychiatric assessment for potential serious conditions, if things that just aren't adding up and it feels like it's just impossible to get on top of, psychiatrists are a little bit expensive, obviously, for assessments, but it's something that is worth your money and time if you are consistently meeting the same barriers over and over again. What are the benefits to working towards a delayed reward or gratification that may be prolonged to the future? So I talk about this elusive delayed gratification, but why is it so good? We have those obvious answers, which is reaching your end goals, but why? What are the other benefits? What are the other parts of delaying gratification and waiting and being patient and not needing something instantly? And, having that almost like satisfaction from things just being calm and not being intense constantly, and feeling that, letting yourself feel negative feelings and eventually, persevering through the other side. What are the benefits? I'm sure you understand by this stage, some of the benefits of working towards delayed gratification far outweigh the very temporary negative experiences or emotions that you may come across along the way, okay? So we know now that, hold on, there's a big payoff. There is a big payoff to this stuff, because if you're taking advice from somebody who, I pretty much have ticked every single goal that I've had for myself in the last 5 to 10 years, and the ones I have ahead of me are right on track, and sometimes I wish I made even bigger goals, but in essence, I think the ones I have are pretty big anyway, and I don't think they need to be looking like anything that makes any sense to anyone else except me, but there's a reason why I've got there. So sometimes listening to somebody who's been through that process, and that will tell you, it's delaying, it's not giving in constantly to everything that's easier or feels good right then and there. So benefits of delaying reward and gratification include the following: improved sense of self-worth, identity, accomplishment, self-esteem, and self-control. The list goes on, however, for the benefits that you will experience from delaying gratification, because there are no real negative sides except for, in the moment, having to be okay with being slightly uncomfortable over and over and over again. Being able to look around you and know that everything that you have worked towards has come from repeated efforts and trialing and triumphing through hardship, okay? So you can look around you and go, yeah, I worked for that. I worked for that as well. I did the thing that was uncomfortable. I repeatedly put effort in. I made sure I showed up for myself. And it's not that people wish they were as motivated as you. It's probably more so that people wish that they didn't give in as easily as they did to things that are easy, right? And that's what it is. It's not, I wish I was as motivated as you. It's, I wish I could be patient. I wish I could wait for what you've waited for. I wish I could put in the effort without having to feel awesome all the time to get to where you've gotten. Because that's what it actually means. That's what it means. That's what we know as long-term achievers, people who, are in love with delayed gratification. We know that it's not motivation. It is doing things even when it doesn't feel good. I've said this many times in podcasts before. Get used to things feeling shit and be okay with it, as long as that action is helping you contribute towards the bigger goal, the bigger picture. So satisfaction long-term in that every day you are faced with, or at least you are faced less often with, the challenges of financial hardship, issues with your physical and mental health, okay? So, you're not gonna, if you're saving money and you're an avid saver and you're not spending all the time and compulsive spending, you'll get to this, there might be a medical bill that comes up, you might need a surgery, and all of a sudden you've got the money. Why? Because you have it for a rainy day. And so you're gonna have a better experience of life. It's not just gonna come at you. Bills aren't just gonna come at you. You're gonna make more responsible decisions so that you are thinking about the future self and how it's gonna impact your future self, so that you don't have these constant negative experiences, not even thrown at you, but possibly they're there as a result of not thinking, not planning, not trying to work towards something that is much bigger than right now. Building resilience, learning how to face adversity and certainly understand the requirement of pushing through, okay? Surviving and thriving beyond difficulty. These are the benefits. These are the benefits of delaying gratification for later, for the big thing, for the the feeling that heats you up inside. It literally is like a fire inside of you when you get there. And I know this because it's been multiple occurrences in my life in the last decade where I've figured out, it's gone off in my head. I've gone, it's not about the small things daily that can give me a quick hit. It's not about the cigarettes. It's not about the alcohol. It's not about getting drunk on the weekend and looking forward to the weekend so I can down some cocktails and drown my sorrows. That's not what life is about. Life is about the big shit, the stuff you work towards that nobody sees you doing until it's done. You put hours, weeks, months and years, and like cumulatively for a lot of these experiences, for some people who've reached these big goals, that's what it takes. And that's what's behind all this stuff. Behind the big shiny object that you see they've achieved or the big accomplishment is a whole lot of hard work and a whole lot of sacrifice and a whole lot of this doesn't feel nice right now. This doesn't feel awesome right now, but I'm going to do it anyway because in 5 years' time, I'm going to be so grateful I did. I'm actually have that thing that I promised myself I would get. And nobody likes breaking promises to themselves. And it's really difficult sometimes to take responsibility for that as well. Like, how many times have you not accomplished something and instead of thinking, fuck, what did I do? Or what did I not do to get there? You've thought, nah, everyone else's problem except mine. I'm not here because blah, blah, blah. I don't act like that with anything in my life. Nothing. There is nothing in my life that is impossible. And everything that I set my mind to, I want to achieve, even if it's difficult, even if I'm faced with problems or I'm faced with backlash, whatever it might look like, I still don't care. I have the most stubborn attitude towards it because I will never allow anybody or anything, not even myself, to tell me that I can't. Might not be able to right now, but I will. I will. Because I've seen what small efforts do over time. Finally, reaching the goals you put off for so long. There is no other feeling like it. And once you unlock this way of living, you can fully understand why it's incredibly beneficial and it solves so many of the problems you've been experiencing because you've reversed your way of thinking. It's no longer what is amazing right now and feels awesome right now and I'm not going to do anything but that. It's what am I doing for the 6 days ahead, the 10 days ahead, the 2 weeks ahead, the 5 years ahead, the 10 years ahead, the 20 years ahead. What am I doing right now that's going to impact that? Because who you are right now impacts who you will be in years to come. What you do right now impacts what you will have in years to come in your life. Who you are surrounded by impacts your circle and your support network in years to come. It'll help improve your relationships and connections with others, but thinking about the impacts of your decisions, of your behavior on yourself and those by thinking about your behavior and decisions on other people, right? Those who love and care about you. Experiencing a more sustainable sense of satisfaction over time, accomplishing a larger goal, then usually means that you get to experience the benefits of such through longer periods of time, right? So not only are you reaching this goal, but all of a sudden, you buy a house, you save for this house, or you might be working towards a degree and you finish the degree. You got the fucking degree forever. You got the house forever. It's not like, that random online purchase that you made 50,000 times over in the last 3 years. You're not going to remember that or see that in 10 years' time. But all these big projects, it's no coincidence that you actually get to have them for longer. You get to celebrate something like competing. You've got the photos for life. You've also got the mindset that you've established from that process. You now have that for life. That is a skill you've acquired for life. These are valuable things. And funnily enough, it's the most valuable thing is putting in the work towards that process, because the end process can sometimes be that you have it like that. It's like, bought the house, right? It's in my hands. Not that quick, 90-day settlement maybe, but it's because that journey itself was part of that. It was part of celebrating and feeling accomplished. And that's what you've got to start getting hooked on. You've got to start getting hooked on accomplishment, not on things that almost have no meaning and certainly no sort of long-term desired effect. There is nothing that you can benefit from it long-term. It might look like tackling your nutrition and your physical health, establishing a better work-life balance, okay? finishing your studies, saving towards a home for your family, saving for an overseas holiday or travel, a big trip around the world, whatever it might look like, pursuing a sport you enjoy, or even quitting a toxic addiction and establishing healthier approaches to managing stress or negative feelings. You know, this is all bettering yourself. This is all working on yourself. If you spend most of your life in a role where you believe that life comes at you and that you have no sort of role to play in that, you're going to have that experience. You're going to have an experience where people come at you and things come at you and events come at you and bills come at you, and you will feel really, really out of control, because most of that is, not thinking forward. And in a positive sense as well. We're not trying to get you to be anxious. It's like, having delayed gratification is actually looking forward to a big thing and being excited for it. Finally, to finish up the podcast with a very purposeful statement and something that will hopefully really sit well with you in conjunction with this entire concept of delayed gratification. Your life changes when you do. As always, if you believe you're struggling with addiction, mental health issues, you'd like to seek further help, I always drop this in podcasts as often as possible because, maybe one day it might sink in and somebody might actually action it. And honestly, it is life-changing. To get help, to get the right help, or somebody who suits you, is life-changing. Please reach out to your GP for a referral for a mental health care plan if you need one, to see a qualified psychologist, to meet your specific mental health needs, and or reach out to Lifeline Crisis Support and Suicide Prevention 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on 131144. That's it from me. Looking forward to doing another podcast and vlog for you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye.